Hello, my name is Jordan, and my project is on the authenticity of raw and Foley sounds. I believe that raw sound is far more superior than Foley when it comes to authenticity. So, to begin, sound is a perception that enlightens us and helps us navigate in the world and allows us to understand and comprehend the diverse spatial ecology. Sound in general account for one of the many factors that enables understanding of an experience. Foley in production is typically used for fictional aspects and is used post production. However, that's not limited to it because it's also used in non-fiction and informative sort of pieces too. So informative pieces would bear more of a non-fictional sort of aspect, which means it could be seen as authentic. So the question is, what is authenticity? In which, when it comes to sound and the transduction of sound, I would actually classify authentic audio to be something that has both the high and low fidelity of audio in that is unedited, so you can hear both, and it would go with the visual output. Um, so what makes it different compared to Foley is this one is not objective. Raw audio is not objective, and I'll be going through why it's not objective further on in my project. In accordance to Mac Haggett, there is no authentic experience because everything is unmediated. Hence, everything viewed cannot be authenticated. However, I would like to limit of his argument to my argument to something that is only reflective to that of fictional Foley, or just Foley in general. It does not account for raw audio. I believe that raw audio, in addition with video, can be deemed real life, and it would help with the expectations and experiences, which would mean that there are no limitations, unless, of course, is that of politics, which would be something that's Foley. My main theological framework builds on Mac Haggett's as well as argues with Mac Haggett's sort of approach to Foley when it comes to his journal Transduction and the Sound of Combat Foley in Fight Club. It was criticized by Haggett that the critique of authenticity is inapplicable based on the fact that everything is mediated and it's impossible to have something unmediated. Although the basis of this is true, it's only based on the fictional aspects of fantasy and imaginations that are for the viewer. My argument, however, is that the critique of authenticity in Foley, through a political lens, can be further investigated when it comes to informative or non-fictional pieces. So Barbara Flukiger also says that sound and effects in film, the reason for sound is to sort of convey a story in which now there is a shift to post-production sound. Audiovisual then would now be considered something that's normative to have this archive of sounds that are universally understood, and this would give a audio-visual expectation from the viewer. In other words, the phylogenetically label, or what was previously used for just animals, distinguishment of animals, can be used towards these labels of what is being heard and how we could deem it authentic based on what we have heard and what type of similarities, not even the same thing, because it's almost impossible to get the same notes, the same frequency, everything. The sound archive embedded in sound allows us to contextualize and authenticate those sounds, even though they may not be authentic. So as we know, sound does not just merely have a denotative value, but also has a connotative value, which is based on social understanding and relationship. Hence is why Foley might actually seem authentic based on the fact that, hey, this sounds very similar to something, but might not sound exact. So how can this be political? Simply going on my phone and going on to the Vancouver.ca website, I could see that downtown Vancouver is Vancouver's primary business district, houses many arts, entertainment, and sports venues, and is close to several vibrant residential communities. So this information, is not only informative, but it also produces this effect of of downtown being quite urban. So, how can I recreate this so it would actually better be understood through the concept of authenticity and between raw and Foley? So I decided to create this audio-visual aspect in where I would actually walk around downtown and have a little storytelling session.
Downtown Vancouver, the highlight of British Columbia. Let its natural yet urban beauty mesmerize you. Downtown is where everything is within a walking distance and is bike friendly. Home to the Business and Entertainment District, explore and capture the vibrant display of architectural designs and downtown lifestyle. The divine beauty of nature and urban culture combined. Visit downtown Vancouver today.
So this is the video, and the only thing is this video here is actually not the original one, but something that is altered. From a objective standpoint, the clip adheres to the ideology of what downtown is, as per what downtown, or what the website says about downtown. In Hagen's journal, it was deemed necessary to criticize the post-production values. Firstly, I would go through Hagen's synchrosis aspect, which is shown through the camera. What you see through the camera is also what you hear. So there is a consistent relationship between what you see and what you hear. You could sort of tell this is not really possible because with the omnidirectional mic, you would hear everything. There is no specific amplification of a single source. That was another term that was highlighted in Hagen's paper was Schaeffer's schizophonia, which was the cutting of sound and for it to be reproduced in a different segment or in a later segment. There's a whole bunch of different snippets of different sounds and everything added, in which there are like a whole bunch of different separate sounds stacked up and layered together to bring out a more full sort of approach. This deems a transduction or an alteration of sounds that is objectively fit for the segment. The ambient levels were quite very subtle, and Schaeffer's concept of fidelity and sound reproduction was that with less ambient sounds, you're able to hear the very tiny sounds that you may not hear. So now I'm going to present you with the real one, and this is what this one sounds like.
In downtown, we could already see that it's quite loud, and it has a whole bunch of loud beeps that cover up the sound of nature. Overall, we can see that downtown is a busy place, and despite it trying to represent something that's architectural and urban, it would seem rather quiet or even very loud at times, with no focus on a particular sound. In this raw footage, or in this raw video, we see that there's no semiotics or no actual sound that represents something or symbolizes something. rather, with all this people moving around, we still don't get to actually even hear them.
So there are some limitations. James Lasher in Haggard's journal also complies or is coherent with Haggard's idea of unmediated audio being or everything's mediated, so you can't have something unmediated. He was concerned with Schaeffer's schizophrenia filter, which would mean that events were possible for it to be unmediated when they ultimately cannot. So essentially what happens is that the usage of the actual transduction or the transcription of the audio is what makes it so it cannot be unmediated. However, the difference is that cinematography does not aim towards appealing to the truth, but solely the fabrication of a narrative of the story. And that's what I think where it branches off of, and that's why it always gets this sort of understanding of why media cannot be unmediated. The issue with Foley is that it is objective in nature, and with film and everything, there is some sort of objective to have the audio-visual component tell a story and something. So the audio cannot be unmediated in any ways, as it requires a narrative, and this is consistent with the narrative, so you have the viewers understand what's going on objectively. However, what's different with my concept of audio and visual soundscapes is that the high and low fidelity of audio needs to appear unedited. I would lose the visual narrative aspect, but that would allow for a more subjective understanding of the ecology, and that's what's most important, because experiences are subjective and experiences cannot be defined as a single sort of definition of when it comes to a certain experience. The two types of listening I would like to go through is the passive and active aspect of listening, where active listening, which would be something of raw audio, would require the audience to actually participate and choose what sounds they hear, choose what's most meaningful to them, whereas something like that's participatory is objective, and that would be more Foley oriented, because the Foley will choose a specific narrative for the viewer to comprehend. As a conclusion, I firmly believe that audio can be unmediated, and it can also be authentic. However, it's determined by the domain of, or the means of production of, and as well as its narrative and objective values, if there's some sort of objective. And when it comes to the use of Foley and raw audio, I would like to say that raw audio is most definitely authentic, and it's not objective in any way, based on the fact that it would require active participation rather than something of Foley which would require passive. So this would mean that there are some sort of, in this case, this would mean that there are hidden narratives when it comes to Foley, and with Foley trying to actually act as authentic, the narrative skews that sort of label of authentic and could be skewed in different ways, such as political, as I described. So hence, Foley is also political, therefore cannot be authentic. If the audio can be unmediated, and this can only be done through raw audio in conjunction with video to make an audio-visual sort of mean. The means of production is the most important aspects that would actually determine whether or not something could be classified as authentic. Foley does have the objective to provide a sense of realism, but does not provide the subjective understanding of it. It objectively tells you what a specific sound is, in which the real world experiences are to be considered to have audio that's impartial to a narrative, and is authentic and is based on experience of the active listeners. And that's the most important part and critique of what authenticity is in audio.